Welcome to another edition of Buc What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. It looks like the season is finally over for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and tonight we'll be discussing the game versus the New Orleans Saints and taking a look at where we go from here. And I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Pless. How you doing tonight, Michael?
Oh, doing good, Gene. Glad to be back on. And yeah, that was I'm just glad the season's over, to be honest. It was a tough season, tough to get through. But hey, there's a bright future ahead. Got a lot of talented players on this team.
Yep, and that's kind of where we have to start looking. So I do apologize for last week. Honestly, I fell asleep. And by the time I woke up, it was like too late to do this. So I do apologize, and I'll do better. Just being on vacation has spoiled me. But I'm back full time. And, tonight, I really want to start with this, with the game versus the New Orleans Saints. I know a lot of people wanted the Bucs to lose. I'm not one of those. I'm not of that crowd that, you fans, there's a fan show. You root for the Bucs how you see fit, and I understand that. But for me, I want the Bucs to win any game they're on the field and they're playing. I want them to win the game. I don't want them to so-called throw the game. And it was good to see them beat a division rival, so they didn't get swept by everybody in the division. So, there's that. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the game, Michael. And what do you see as far as the future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Well, Jameis, 95-yard drive. Kind of saw a flash of what everything could be pretty much in this game as far as potential goes. Chris Godwin was outstanding. A lot of good things. Peyton Barber looked good. That opening drive to start the game was something that I think as Bucs fans we've been looking for the whole season, and it just didn't happen. They come down the field and just Jameis is just looking sharp. He had some passes that could have been intercepted, but again, he was looking good though. Making right choices, making the right reads, matches. We're running the football, getting into the red zone. I'm down their throat, ends up being a touchdown. It was a great drive. It was simple play calls, simple play design, nothing too fancy. Take what's there. It's really something that I've been, I think all Bucs fans have been screaming for this whole year, and to finally see it in the last game was very honest, because we know they have the potential, and to show it against the Saints, it was good to see, because the Saints are no joke. That's a great team there, and they're probably going to go far in the playoffs, I think, personally. But yeah, a lot of good things. Defensively, I thought we saw some good things. Stop the run. We kind of contained and Mark Ingram, which was nice to see. Got some pressure on Drew Brees, which was good.
Yeah, there you go. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. Jameis wasn't going for the bomb every time he got the ball in his hands, and that's the one thing that I appreciated, and I hope that he can take that into next season. Because I don't know about you, but throughout the season, I've seen tight ends run wide open. I've seen running backs run wide open, and he's going for the deep ball instead of getting at 5 yards and making a third and manageable to get another first down to extend the play. And again, it's something that I know that he looks at game film and a lot more extensively than I do. But these are just kind of casual things that I saw. Yeah. When you see players running wide open like Adam Humphries, you see him running wide open, and you can just hit him, dump the ball off for 5 yards instead of going for 40. You extend the play, and you help yourself with the field position battle, and that'll definitely put you, in a good position somewhere along the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jameis, again, he had his bad moments. Again, the turnovers, you don't want to see that. The interceptions. Again, the first one, I thought Mike Evans, ran off his route a little bit too early. Second one, I think it got deflected, if I'm not mistaken. And then the third one just can't happen. Throwing into triple coverage, trying to get Mike the record, the 1,000 yards and all that. But again, I saw a lot of good things. Most part, it was a very well played game, very exciting game. Obviously, I mean, to win it at the end there with probably the best pass of Jameis's career in the NFL on that deep pass.
And that walk off touchdown, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was a great way to end it. This rookie class and as a whole was really good, and that's a good thing for Jason Light, because the 2016 class so far has been a little disappointing, but I think but this 2017 class has been pretty special, especially the 4 picks. You have O.J. Howard, Justin Evans, Beckwith have all been really outstanding professional players. I mean, as far as knowing what to do and what is expected of them, and always finding ways to get better. And not many people know that Chris Godwin was hurt pretty much the whole year. I mean, he was playing hurt pretty much the whole season. He had a very significant injury that he kept under wraps and just kept playing, didn't complain. And it was great to see him get that big touchdown to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And exactly. And to go along with that, me, I've been on this apology tour all season long. Justin Evans is a guy that totally I had no idea, that this is how this guy was going to play. I think, as he's growing in the NFL with all the playing time that he's gotten, I think that he's going to definitely grow into the position, for that secondary. It's going to come down to them getting the defensive line fixed. It's not rocket science, really. I mean, I'm looking at teams like the Ravens. The Ravens rarely have a deficiency on the defensive line. I don't know if it's the talent evaluators or what happens, but they always have a pretty solid defensive line year after year, and they get after the quarterback. And it shouldn't be hard to get players around Gerald McCoy. And it's kind of disappointing, the fact that we haven't had a double-digit sack person since Simeon Rice, who, by the way, should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the conversation. And I think that it's garbage that his name hasn't even been mentioned. So, not to get off the subject, but when you bring up Simeon Rice, I had to bring that up as well. But, kind of getting back to the line, it's been very disappointing. I expected a lot more from the defensive line with all the moves that they made in free agency and bringing certain players back from injury. And just right off the bat, you had an injury and you had somebody that they cut who were supposed to be integral parts of that front four. So right off the bat, I mean, it just, you started out in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, I was subject to it. I thought the defensive line this year was going to be, we thought, Noah Spence was going to take that next step in his second year, and Baker was going to be, a monster next to Gerald McCoy and be able to rush the passer, run, and be a productive player. It just didn't happen, and then we thought he'd be more, productive as far as, sack totals. Jacquez Smith was another guy that we were banking on. And unfortunately, he's a free agent right now. And it just, same thing with Noah Spence, got hurt again.
And while we're talking about Noah Spence, I'm just kind of curious. I wanted to ask you about this. How significant is his injury? Is this like career ending, or how serious is the injury that they shut him down for this year?
It's a tough injury. It's he dislocated his shoulder. Now I'm not sure if he had any type of tear. Whenever you dislocate your shoulder, whenever that pops out, it's subject to happen again. That's tough. I mean, he's going to have to really, rehab it and make that strong as possible as he can. Make sure everything is good inside there. I'm not sure if he's going to have to play with a harness. You know, that might be a smart move to just play with it. I don't know if that's going to, you know, hamper him, but you know, some type of brace I would say would be expected, protect him from future injuries, because I've dislocated my knee twice, and it's,
Ooh.
you know, it's subject, and you know, as they say, you know, every time you dislocate a joint or dislocate, it's subject to happen again because those joints and tendons get looser. So, I mean, really, it's just rehab. You know, get stronger and get, you know, better as far as that goes.
Yeah. And you know, again, that kind of comes back to coaching and the training staff. The training staff have
Yeah.
to really be in there helping them to get them where they need to be by camp. You know, so that's I'm hoping that this is one of those things like with Gerald McCoy, who had injuries in consecutive years, and then he just took off. I'm hoping that we see something like that, similar to that right now. But again, you know, just kind of looking back at the whole season, it's really been really disappointing. And I was looking at some of the numbers for you know, these games, you know, just for the team as a whole. And you know, as I mentioned to you off camera,
Right.
Gerald McCoy is number 10 in sacks. I mean, in not sacks, but number 10 in tackles. Whether it's combined, total, or assisted, Joe McCoy is number 10, and there are no defensive linemen, defensive ends in the top 10 of tackles for the team. And your secondary, you shouldn't have multiple secondary players getting more tackles than your front four, or you know what I mean. That just it shouldn't happen. The secondary is like your last line of defense. And just unfortunately, we're seeing where they're making tackles. The linebackers, which have been phenomenal, from Kendall Beckwith to Levante David to Quan Alexander, they've all been spectacular, and each one has had significant time off with injuries and stuff. So no, I wouldn't say significant, but they've missed some games because of injuries. Again, that's a real testament to how good our linebackers are and how underrated they are. So that's definitely something to really be excited about for next year, is that linebacker position. And hopefully, again, I'm going to say this until we see it on the field, I hope they can fix that front four, because that's going to alleviate a lot of pressure on the back end of the defense.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if you watch the tape and you see, I mean, most of the time our defensive line is on the ground. There's just too many guys that are, whether it be up the middle or, you know, defensive ends getting pushed off the ball. For instance, look at the Saints' first touchdown, Kamara. I mean, our defensive line got pushed all the way to the right. Kamara had an easy cutback for a 7-yard touchdown. It's happened way too often this year. That needs to be fixed. It has to be fixed. As I've said it on Real Bucs Talk, it's the number one priority this offseason. It has to be. It's been a priority for the last, I don't know how many years, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't been corrected. So it's something that has to be done.
Yeah, and you know the cliche, but it's true. Games are won and lost in the trenches. So you got to you have that should be the number one thing you shore up.
Yeah,
I understand people are talking about, you know, wanting a running back or wanting, you know, different, you know, specialty players, kick return or whatever. But you got to get that offensive line and defensive line fixed. That's I mean, especially you look at Jameis Winston getting hurt. That didn't need to happen. I mean, if you've got the right guys in there, I realize injuries happen and stuff like that, but you have to protect your quarterback. He's that guy that's going to get you where you want to go. Because I look at teams like the Texans, who were without their starting quarterback. Cleveland has had quarterback issues forever. Just teams like that don't have the luxury of a good quarterback. And you know, a lot of people don't like Jameis, whatever you say. Jameis Winston is he he is a good quarterback, but he can be a great quarterback if he cuts down on the mistakes that he's making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and back to the defensive line, and in the offensive line, actually, it's just rushing teams. They always add pass rushers every year. It doesn't matter whether it's through the draft or through free agency. You look at what the Eagles have done. You look at Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers add an offensive lineman and defensive lineman every draft. It doesn't matter round, they just add them. They add them every year because that's what smart teams do. You look at the Patriots, they do the same thing, add offensive lineman and defensive lineman, with premium picks. Usually Pittsburgh, I believe they had a defensive lineman in the first round. It's pretty much every year. Baltimore, you were mentioning Baltimore, off air, they add pass rushers every year. It's just what they do. And that's something that the Bucs need to start doing. You have to put high picks. It doesn't matter if it's a need or not, because and that's what the Bucs need to do. They need to start building into their lines. Position that has been ignored way too often has to change this offseason.
Yeah. So what I want to kind of get your take on who are your, if you had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, who are your top 4 players that kind of stood out to you this season? And we'll start with number 1 and just kind of give me some idea why you felt that way.
Okay. Well, I mean, number 1, I think you have to go with Lavonte David. Lavonte David was probably our best player this season, hands down. Most consistent playmaker, and really a good leader. I mean, he's really stepped up as far as being a leader, and I thought he played his best football this year and really backed it up with the numbers. I mean, I think he had, 5 fumble recoveries or something like that, 5 sacks. He was up there as far as production. I thought Lavonte was our best player. Second, I would probably say Gerald McCoy again. I mean, Gerald McCoy, our best defensive lineman. Well, third, I would say still Jameis Winston. I thought Jameis, I know with the turnovers, the fumbles, yes, that needs to be shored up, but improved. I really liked what he did this year as far as better with his progressions, especially this last 4 games. He was outstanding. I thought this was his best 4-game stretch. And again, this is with consistent pressure in his face. No running game to help him out at all. See, in-depth play calling. Let's be fair. He didn't have great play calling to back him up. And play design was poor as well. So I thought Jameis was really good. And then I don't know. I really don't know who you could give it to for. I guess Ali Marpet. Marpet was playing really well before he got hurt. And yeah,
well,
those would be my top 4.
Where would you put Quan Alexander in all this?
Quan would be right there. I mean, if we went 5, he would probably be the next guy. I just thought, he was out for quite a bit this year, and that hurt his numbers. But again, I thought he still played well. And again, his troubles this year was because of the defensive line. He got blocked up a lot as far as, he just couldn't fight through it. He's smaller. He was moving east to west. He was at his best. I mean, he could shut him down if they're going east and west, but he got attacked a lot up the middle just because the offensive line could get to him so easily this season.
Yeah. So for me, I think I'm pretty much in line with you almost because I did have Lavonte David just based on all the turnovers that he was able to create, and he just has a nose for the ball. And, it's unfortunate that the team didn't win more games, and, he didn't get an opportunity to showcase what he can do a lot more. But he's important to this team, very important to this team. So I had Lavonte David as my number 1. I had I had Gerald McCoy as number 2 because, despite what people say about Gerald McCoy, this guy plays through injuries, and he's there, and, he does what he does. And, the team would not be the same without Gerald McCoy. And I just feel bad that, he's been here as long as he has and never really gotten any players, significant players around him. Another guy that I would like to mention that, I don't know how you feel about this, but Clint McDonald. I think what Clint McDonald does in the locker room and as far as what he brings to teaching these guys on the field, it's you can't put a price tag on it. So he's one of those guys that I thought had a great year. And then Jameis Winston. I know Jameis Winston gets a lot of flack for turnovers. I get that. And, again, that's something that he has to continually work on. The guy is 23 years old, getting ready to be 24. Just the numbers that he's put up, he's looking to, if he can stay healthy, he may surpass Vinny Testaverde as the all-time Bucs leading passer next season, by the end of next season. That's a potential possibility. I think he's at like 3106 is what he needs, or something around there, to be the all-time leading passer. And in that, for his age and what he's been able to accomplish, it's one of those things that, I understand that a lot is expected of him, but you have to look at it, look at everything. His line, sometimes the play calling hasn't been what it should be. I would like to see him be able to audible out of stuff. I honestly don't know what the case is with him, but he can read defenses. He can spot certain things. I don't know why they don't just let him have a little bit more reign to try to, change some plays up rather than, run what they're calling in.
Yeah. I believe he's allowed to make audibles and all that. I know he can check if he wants to. Again, I would like to see him be used as a faster pace, up tempo, more no huddle. I think that's when Jameis operates at his best, when he's just not thinking and it's just you just letting it, let it happen. Pretty much is just on the go. He's at his finest moments. That top four, I thought Clinton should have been starting way earlier. I thought he was playing really well in training camp, and he had 5 sacks this year, which is really good for him.
What's interesting to me is, and I don't want to play what if or anything like that, but just looking at how Chris Godwin progressed, looking at how Clinton McDonald played, and Chris Baker just didn't produce like he was expected to produce for, what they brought him in to do. That money could have gone towards somebody like a Calais Campbell or something like that. I know that it wouldn't happen, but these are guys that are impact players that are difference makers, because Calais Campbell, not on that Jaguars team, that's a totally different looking team. So there are players like that do come along in free agency that can be difference makers. And you're going for a guy like a Chris Baker, who was on a Redskins team and he excelled on a Redskins team. I don't know if that's really saying a lot, based on the level of talent that's on the Washington team on defense.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Back to the Calais Campbell, I just didn't see that happening, especially with the contract that he got. And he really got a great contract. I mean, from a player standpoint, Jacksonville is going to be in a lot of cap trouble coming up in a few years, just because of all the money as far as guarantees, and it's really going to hurt them. So they're going to be in a bind in a few years. And Calais, that's $17 million per year. That's just way too much. But I understand what you're saying as far as impact players. And yes, that money could have been used maybe towards a better depth role player, as far as maybe offensive line or even defensive line. Other guys that would have been more serviceable than a Chris Baker, who just work out. And, the same could be said of Deshaun Jackson. But
yeah,
I think
and again, do you see Deshaun Jackson next year improving where his chemistry with Jameis? Do you think is that a possibility? or is this, what you see is what you get?
No, I think they'll definitely improve. I think timing, and I think understanding how to use Deshaun better as far as his routes and everything, and utilizing his speed or passing me passing them take forward next year. Way, I think the deep ball will come. I think again it's all timing. Jameis can throw the deep ball. I don't think that's an issue. And again, I think Jameis was injured earlier in the season. I think he was playing hurt with a bad shoulder, and I think that definitely affected him. You saw when he was more healthy these last 4 games with more accuracy. The ball was coming out crisper there. I mean, just look at the Chris Godwin play. I mean, that's a perfect throw. So we know he has it in him. I mean, he can do it. I think it's just timing and getting more consistent with his receivers. And I think that comes, with off-season work.
Yeah, most definitely. And he's got a season with Deshaun under his belt, so that can only help. And now I kind of want to go back to the defense because again, that's just been on my mind this whole season. Just watching running backs just run through the line and just gouge the Bucs for big chunks. As a GM, if you're a GM, how are you fixing that? Are there guys out there, whether it's free agency or whether it's the draft, are there guys out there that you could see in a Buccaneers uniform kind of helping things along?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. There's going to be a lot of room for, to add players as whether it's free agency or through the draft. I believe certain guys are just not going to be back. Chris Baker, Robert Ayers, guys like Ryan Russell. A lot of guys are just not going to be brought back. I don't think. For even a Clint McDonald, unfortunately, I just don't see him coming back. Right now, I just don't see it. So there's going to be some cleaning, some house cleaning. Your personnel goes. Guys that could be added. Big names in free agency. Maybe a Ansa from Detroit. I've heard of. A lot of fans are clamoring for him. He's going to get big money, so the way the light's going to go. But he would be a good addition. Very consistent player. Some other guys, some veterans that will be out there that will be available that can add depth. Maybe bring back Adrian Claiborne. Who knows? Like along those lines, maybe a Mike Bennett, but I don't know if they want the trouble there. He's a good player. But in the draft, there's a lot of defense linemen in the draft. There's always good linemen in the draft. This is a very good class as far as defensive line, interior and outside, as far as edge. Guys that could be had, especially early rounds. And that's where I think the Bucs are going to go in the draft early is the trenches. They have to attack line. I think you'll see that. A lot of people are talking about corners and safeties. It's just lines, because if you have the lines, everything else comes into place. Everything works better. As far as your corners,
just think about this. You've got Matt Ryan, who's got 5 to 6 seconds to scan the field and look somebody open and then throw the ball. There's zero pressure. You look at the sack totals. It's just I think Tampa. Right. Somebody said Tampa was last in the league in sacks. That right there needs to get addressed. If nothing else gets done, that needs to get addressed. And since John Gruden was here, and I don't like dropping his name, the Bucs have just not been able to get that front four, and even something similar to that, to where they have some semblance of a pass rush. I think when Michael Bennett was coming into his own, when Mark Dominic let him go, and I've never gotten over that. But again, it's one of those things where if you can keep some of those guys around, core guys like him around, there's no telling what you could do. But again, we just have not. Tampa has not been able to get
Right.
that one guy who can consistently get after the quarterback. Just haven't been able to do it. I don't know if are we cursed. I mean, I can't rationalize why the Bucs can't get some people in there just to fill those holes.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an area of need for the longest time, and it's something that needs to be done this offseason. They have to draft defensive linemen, sign some free agents as well, depth, and have that 8-man rotation that they're trying to have. There has been rumblings that, we've, as far as 3-4, is that something they're going to go more to full time? Is Noah Spence going to be an outside linebacker going forward and another type? Or Kendall Beckwith rushing the passer? Same thing with Levante David. That's something that could be had. It's easier to before, I believe, just because of the player talent that is coming out. It's easier to acquire. That is something that could be had in the offseason. That's something they could go in that direction. But, again, we're going to need defensive linemen regardless. You got to get or faster up front, and it's something that needs to happen. For speed, that's my motto. But
and you got to get some dogs on this team. You got to get some guys that are nasty, that they played to the gray area of the whistle. It's just I don't know what it is. It just we haven't really seen that player that gets out there and gets nasty, and people are like, oh man, we got to worry about this guy. We haven't had that for a long time. So I would love to see a player that just will get in there and put you on your butt, and that's pretty much how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and there's some guys in this draft coming out, so hopefully we can identify them. And
and again, it comes back to talent assessment. I know that the knock on Jason Light has been on that defensive line. I mean, since he's been the GM, I'm not going to get into that personally, but just like with Michael Johnson, just some of the other guys that they've brought in that just haven't panned out. Again, he's auditioning to keep his job right now. Dirk Cutter is auditioning to keep his job right now. They've got to hit it. They've got to hit a home run. This is it right here. If they don't do anything else, they've got to put the best product on the field to win some games this 2018.
I've said it on Twitter, and I said it in articles. Jason Light's going to have to have a great offseason. I mean, this is it. He's going to have to put something together where he builds these lines and finally start winning games in these trenches, because even go back to the last couple of years, the Bucs just haven't been winning there. The inconsistencies as far as wins and losses, it just hasn't been there. Red zone struggles because we can't run the ball inside the 20. The same thing goes for the defense as far as red zone issues, allowing touchdowns in the red zone because we can't get pressure on the quarterback. Force turnovers that way. That's where Mike Smith's defense works the best, is when you get pressure, make those quarterbacks rush their throws. That's the name of the game right there. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, that's what it all comes down to on both sides of the ball, because as I mentioned earlier, games are won and lost in the trenches, and we've seen that. I mean, you look at the Saints offensive line and how physical they were with the Bucs defensive line, and that just shouldn't happen. But unfortunately, that's just been the case throughout the season. And I go back to the Carolina game. A winnable game for the Bucs, and it just it just didn't work out. There's too many inconsistencies. These are things that have to get cleaned up, and the fact that Dirk Cutter talks about he's going to be calling the plays, I kind of have to question that, only because there are so many details that are being missed when it comes down to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And your head coach has to be dealing with details. He has to be detail oriented in order to make everything work. He needs to lean more on his offensive coordinator, and let's see what happens. But where we are right now, I'm just I'm kind of at a place where I just want to wait and see what happens in the off season, what they put together, how they come into camp. Do they come into camp condition? How do they run their camp this year? Will it be a little bit more physical than what they did last year? Because last year, I don't think the training and conditioning was there. And then we ended up having the hurricane, which knocked out the bye week, which meant they had to play straight all the way through. So there's just a lot of different things that can go, that can happen. But ultimately, I want to see what the GM and the head coach are going to do in the offseason to get this team in a position to battle for the NFC title and getting into the playoffs. That should be their focus, and that needs to be their focus.
Yeah, absolutely. As Cutter, I wasn't really surprised with what he said as far as this press conference. It was kind of concerning, because I would like to see him make some changes, but I wasn't expecting it. Who he is, he wants to be the play caller, and I respect that. I understand why he wants to do that. That's his calling. I mean, that's what he was brought into the league to do. He's been a good offense coordinator, but good. But I hope he learns from his mistakes, because there's been a lot of issues as far as game management, attention to detail, like you said.
That he's repeated from the year before. Yeah, I saw that. And again,
obviously.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, coaching better from the staff, from the top down. And it starts with Coach Cutter. I mean, he has to his play calling flow, it needs to be better. Establishing the run, establishing an identity is something that needs to happen. And it hasn't taken place since he's gotten here, unfortunately. If you're going to be a 5-wide team, then build your offensive line so you can be a 5-wide team and throw the ball down the field. If that's something you want to do, then commit to it and stick with it. Don't come out and then go back into a 3 tight end set and try to run the football. It just doesn't work. I mean, pick one or the other who you want to be as far as a football team. If you want to be a pass first team, then let's go. Let's ride it out and sling the ball all over the field. But something has to take place where he figures out, what he wants from this team as far as who he wants to be offensively. He does that. I just don't see where the consistency is going to happen. That's where I think you get the slow starts in the first quarters, in the first halves. I mean, his point production in the first half is awful. I mean, that's something that needs to. But yeah, I mean, that's just my little rant on Coach Cutter. But
yeah, and I'm right there with you. And when you talk about the running game, Doug Martin with 406 yards rushing and 3 TDs. Peyton Barber ended up having a better season than Doug Martin did, same amount of TDs. And again, you have to be able to look at these guys. You need to go with who's hot. And what we've seen from Peyton Barber is what you call want to. This guy gets out there and he busts his hump. He's trying to either extend the play or he's trying to get in the end zone. And he's putting forth that effort that you want to see. Now, do you feel like Peyton Barber's the answer, or are you looking at drafting a running back and in the later rounds, or possibly bringing one in from free agency? Because I have a hard time believing that Doug Martin would be returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. The running backs are going to get rehauled. I mean, it's going to get revamped. Let me say, Doug Martin, I don't expect to be back. I don't expect to see Charles Sims back as well. A lot of new running backs. I think Barber will be brought back. And then I think they're going to draft a running back, and I think they're going to sign a free agent possibly to have a nice, stable backfield back there. they need offensive guards. I mean, that's the main issue with this run attack. Guard play this year was downright atrocious. It just wasn't good. J.R. Sweezy just didn't pan out, and Kevin Panfield, I think, is a better tackle than he is guard. I just don't think he's
so do you
guard.
think that? So you feel like Panfield is just playing out of position because he excelled when he did better than I've seen him play better than what he has this year, and I don't know if it's injury related or what the deal is with him.
I just think he's a better tackle per se. I think he should be. He's better as the sixth lineman. I think he should just be as far as a rotational player backup kind of role. I could see him maybe starting down the line as a right tackle, but I just don't see him as an interior player. He gets pushed back way too often and just gets pass protection. And it's something that was a consistent problem this year and led to a lot of hits on Jameis Winston. But that's something that needs to be addressed. But the running backs, I think, are going to be overhauled, and a lot of areas on this team, I think, is going to be changing the personnel. I think there's going to be some changes, especially up front.
Now I have to ask you this: with the team as a whole, just where they are, do you think that you can do enough in one off season to get this team competitive to play for a playoff spot or possibly NFC South title?
I think it's there. I mean, there's still a lot of good players on this team. We're not that far away. Again, it's really up to, I put it into three things. I think coaching up front need to be addressed, and really just overall ability. I think those are the three things that need to be season. I think coaching, as far as Dirk Cutter learning from his mistakes, as far as what went wrong this past year, being tougher as far as, holding these guys accountable, making sure execution is occurring, because, people talk about lack of execution, lack of this, lack of that, play design, play call. Execution should occur in the first couple of weeks, but when we're seeing the same thing in week 11, week 12, week 13,
there's a problem.
Yeah, don't talk to me about lack of execution. It goes to deeper than that. That's on the coaches. I know the players play and the coaches coach. Execution is something that, with a good play call, if you're running a bad play call, then it's hard to execute that play. It's just not going to work. So those two things intertwine. They have to be taught properly. Right, then how are the players supposed to execute that play? If one guy is not executing every week, that's accountability. What I'm talking about? Making sure the right guys are on the field every week, making sure, and that's a place this offseason.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, and I know I mentioned this before, it just didn't seem like the players had a sense of urgency in some of these games. There were games that were winnable games, and they were just, it's like, I don't know if they were sleepwalking or what. They just weren't. I saw a different response. The team looked different. These last four games, the team looked different than what I'd seen in previous games. Mm-hmm. And, when you talk about execution, those are things that you're supposed to clean up during camp, preseason, OTAs, that kind of thing. Those are things that get cleaned up so that you're ready to go for the regular season. If you're having the same issues that you had in camp, OTAs, and preseason in the regular season, even late into the regular season, there's a problem. There's a problem somewhere. I don't know where, but you shouldn't be dealing with, pre-snap penalties and that kind of thing. All that stuff should be getting cleaned up in the off season or in the, when you're preparing for the regular season. We shouldn't even be talking about this.
Yeah, and that's why I was disappointed with the decision to bring back Coach Cutter. I understand all the stability and building continuity and And, building a foundation, I know we've been changing coaches left and right, and I know that has to stop. I know you have to put trust into your coaches that they will be able to figure it out. But look at the numbers and look at the stats from years past and look at what Cutter has produced as far as his resume. And that's what scares me as far as taking this offense to where it needs to be, especially with the players that he has to work with as far as playmakers.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I know there was a lot of unfortunate circumstances. We had injuries. We had 16 straight games. We had no bye week. We had hurricanes that, from every direction. Actions. I know certain guys that we brought in that just didn't work out. I understand that, but again, I expect our coaches to.
This is where this is where coaching leadership comes into play. This is where you got to get people refocused on what they need to do. That's part of the job of the coach. I understand what happens in the locker room where players police each other, but at the end of the day, this is your leader right here. This is a guy who's calling the plays. This is the guy who's setting people where they need to be. He's talking to people that are making boneheaded plays, and that's his job. He needs to be cleaning up a lot of the details that it just seems like he's missing a lot of stuff. And again, hopefully he can go back and look at this and self-evaluation or whatever. They get the players in that they need, but something needs to change because the way that he's coaching this team is not going to get him into the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. So some really drastic things have to change, and they have to win some games that that they're not supposed to win next season in order to for him to keep his job. And again, people have shown me the schedule. Oh, this is going to be a tough schedule. 2016 was supposed to be a tough schedule for the Bucs, and they ended up with a winning season. Yeah. So you still got to go out and play these games. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. You got to go out and play these games. And it's your job when you get on the field, play to your best of your ability and win these games. So those things to me are very important. And the one thing that I'm expecting to see, and I'll say this again, is the end of the season. I talked about this the end of last season and the beginning of this season. Red zone, you got to fix that red zone. You got to fix the defensive line. You got to fix the offensive line. Consistency, very important. And again, you got to have that sense of urgency in every single game. Every single game should be like a playoff game. You shouldn't be, we'll get it next time. We'll do better next time. No, you should be out there doing everything that you can to win that game. So it's just some things that, on film, you just aren't seeing that sense of urgency.
Yeah. I mean, my big things, especially for the offense is like you said, red zone. It needs to be something that has to be corrected. Play design and play calling have to be more simplified and to put up points. And then to occur. The offensive production in the first half too poor. It's something that needs to be corrected. Too many times, I think pretty much every game, we're chasing the game, and it's hard to play when you're always trying to chase and get a lead, in the second half. And that's why we had a lot of close losses this year. They point out, oh, well, we didn't have many blowout losses. Well, because we were chasing the game pretty much the whole time. You're trying to always come back from behind, and sometimes we did, and then the defense would allow it up. But, you can't really put that on the defense. I mean, they were giving up leads and stuff, but the offense wasn't producing. I mean, when you only score, 3 to 6 points a half, not going to cut it. And then also scheme to hide your weaknesses. That's something that I believe coaching staffs should be able to do, and that's something that I see this year. If you know how you have a bad offensive line, when 5 and 7 step drops, get the ball out of Jameis' hands quickly, attack with slants, passing game, run the football. On defense, if you know you don't have a pass rush, then blitz back, press man coverage. hold the ball longer than they should. That's something that we didn't really see much. We saw it in spurts. We saw the like these last 4 games at times, but not enough, not consistently enough. And that's something that has me concerned as far as the coaching staff. I hope it changes, but we'll see what happens. Again, my main focus is player personnel. I think that's where it is, and we're still losing. Then obviously I was right, and it's a coaching error. So,
yeah, there you go. And training and conditioning, very very important. My girl is a nurse, and she doesn't watch football. And when I talk about injury, she's like, "Well, have they looked at the training staff?" And she doesn't watch football. And that was the first thing out of her mouth was, what is the training staff doing? What are how, because they're the ones that should be helping to prevent some of these injuries. And there was a lot of injuries on this team this year. So again, that's just crazy. Let's see. Yeah, they were talking about and let me ask you about these running backs. B. Loggins was asking about the running backs. Jeremy Hill, Dion Lewis, Isaiah Crowell, Le'Veon Bell. I know they're going to re-sign him, so I don't see him as that'd be crazy, but I just don't see the Steelers letting that guy go. So what are your thoughts? I mean, is there anybody in free agency that kind of sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, Isaiah Crowell would be a nice addition. I really like how he plays. Again, he's in a with Cleveland. Again, they don't have a quarterback, so he faces a lot of 8-man boxes. So it's hard to run the football, but he still produces. Kennan is a guy out of from the Vikings, is someone that I would like to see picked up. But again, he might make a lot of money this offseason. So just depends on cost and. But yeah, all those guys. I think Dion Lewis will probably return to New England. They'd be crazy to let him go. He's a really good player. So any of those guys would be a good addition. And I agree, Le'Veon Bell's not going anywhere. So
yeah, because when you look at this team, I don't know. I just think that this team is better than their record shows, and they just it's a lot of wasted talent. We're not sure if Brent Grimes is going to return. No, I know that he wants to come back and play again, potentially, but we don't know where we are with that. It was just to me, this season was it's kind of a wasted opportunity. This was a chance to really showcase what this team can do, and it just it failed on so many different levels. And with the fan base. And all these people that are checking out the show, I appreciate you, because you know what, these are the true fans, the diehard fans out here that love this team no matter what, and they deserve a lot better than what they're seeing this year. So I really hope that Jason Light and Dirk Cutter and that staff, they've been given a lifeline. They've been thrown a lifeline, and they need to do something with it because. It's win now. And, you heard Jason Light say that when Lovie Smith was fired, he wants to win now. They need to win now. I mean, no more excuses. There's just no reason for this team not to do something. And with the cap room that this team, I think they're number 5 in the NFL with cap space. There is no reason that they can't fill a lot of these different holes. So, hopefully that may be something that we'll see. But again, I'm just going to take that wait and see approach to this. There are some players that I'd like to really kind of take a look at. The bowl games have been pretty awesome this year. I've got to see a lot of players that had I not been paying attention wouldn't have really known a whole lot about. So there's a lot of talent in this draft. There's going to be a lot of talent all over on both sides of the ball. So it's something I'm really excited, looking forward to seeing.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking like next week, I don't know if you want to kind of look at some of the free agents and some of the draft picks that you're potentially looking looking at as we move towards the first phase of the offseason, or well, as we get towards that after the Super Bowl. But I figured we could do something like that next week and just kind of get some ideas. I keep hearing about Chubb from what is it, North Carolina State? NC State. I have not seen him yet, so I have to do my homework on him.
He's a stud.
Yeah. Buck the World, UK won. Campbell was asking for too much money. As Michael said, we're going to see how they handle the cap. A team that I don't know how they do it every year. They miraculously handle the cap is the New Orleans Saints. They're allegedly every year they're in salary cap hell, but somehow they come out getting a free agent, or they pull some crazy stuff out of their pants and they make it work. So, again, it's possible. Anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully they lose Drew Brees,
Yeah, you know what? I see that guy playing another couple of years. I mean, he's playing out of this world. Normally he's had like tight ends, and all his tight ends are hurt, and he's still slinging the ball like crazy. But it doesn't hurt to have two 1,500 all-purpose yard backs that at your disposal. I mean, that definitely it makes your life a whole lot easier.
Right. Yeah, most definitely.
So let me get your, with this season being, coming to a close, let me get your final thoughts, and we'll roll up out of here.
Yeah, I mean, 2017, I think one word describes it. I mean, just disappointing. I bought into the expectations. I thought this was a playoff team. I believe we all did. We thought this was going to be the year we all took that next step that towards, being something as far as being relevant. It just didn't happen. Certain things just didn't go our way. Whether it be coaching, whether it be injuries, player execution, guys not living up to expectations. Running game, again, it shows that offensive line we thought was gonna be better than what we saw this year. I mean, I thought the offensive line was gonna be one of our strengths, and it ended up being a weakness for this team, which was disappointing. Defensive line, no pass rush again. Hurt us. I mean, when you can't get pressure on the quarterback in this league, I mean, it's hard to win games, especially close ones. Games, field goal kicking, had his ups and downs. Actually, a positive this year. I thought he did a reasonable job. Consistency of this team and lack of identity is something that I'll take away from 2017, and that's something that moving forward needs to be corrected. And but again, there's a lot of bright players on this team, a lot of up and coming players, starting with Jameis Winston. I mean, it really starts with number 3. The better this team's going to get. And I think he's on the right track. Probably going to be the best quarterback in franchise history. On his way, and he'll figure it out. I'm pretty positive they're going to figure it out. They got smart people, especially in the front office. I believe in Jason Light. Hopefully, Dirk Cutter can figure out, what we're wrong this season. I think he can figure it out, and hopefully a better season in 2018 for sure.
All right. Well, guys, what I'm taking from 2017, and the thing that just irks my nerves is the defense. The defense is just I've had a love-hate relationship with this defense going all the way back to the last, when right after John Gruden was fired, and they had the fire sale and got rid of a lot of players, and they tried to start all over again, and ever since then, it's just been like the defense has just been a liability. The quarterback will go out and get a lead, and the opposing team will go down the field and score and win the game. That's just been kind of the MO of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for quite a while. I would say almost a decade. And it's something that needs to change. Something that they need to change the culture. I think, as I mentioned before, this team is a better team than what the record shows. And they just didn't play as a team. I didn't see them playing as a team. I didn't see them trusting the guys around them. I didn't, there was a lot of things that I saw the year before when they were talking family, when they were more of a cohesive unit, and you saw these guys and the communication was better. There were just so many things that they were doing that were positive, and it's just like they regressed going into 2017 from 2016. A couple of things I'll throw out there: Levante David, Quan Alexander, Chris Conte, Kendall Beckwith, Ryan Smith, Justin Evans, Brent Grimes, Robert McClain, Vernon Hargraves, and then you get to Gerald McCoy. All the players that I've mentioned in that order were your tacklers, your leading tacklers on this team. So that needs to be fixed. That's something that needs to be fixed. Your secondary should not be getting more tackles than the guys, your linebackers in secondary. They're having to plug all these holes and stuff. And these are things that need to get fixed. They need to work on stopping the run. There's a lot of things that need to happen. And again, I don't want to bash this team too much, but a 4-5 season, that's very disappointing for the level of talent that's on this team. The coaching has to do, they have to do better. Just as a whole, the team has to do better. And, those are my expectations going into 2018 is win now. And, I'm going to take that moniker from Jason Light, and I'm saying the Buccaneers need to win now. It's not about statistics anymore. It's about wins and losses. It's about getting to the playoffs. The fact that three out of 4 teams in the NFC South are in the playoffs right now, that just bothers me, because I don't really care for any of the other teams in the NFC South, but the fact that they're all playing and the Bucs are not is something that needs to get corrected. And unfortunately, if this coach can't bring everything together, I'm sure the Glaziers are have it in the back of their head. They're going to be working on something to where they can try to fix this. They haven't been able to since they've been in power, but it's something they've continually worked on. So again, 2018, it's all about improvement, and my moniker is win now. And that's where my expectations are with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And again, I want to thank everybody who's been in the live chat and, putting out questions and, talking. I appreciate you guys. If you're following me on Twitter, hit me up on Twitter, because I will be putting together some things that, I will be dealing more with the fans on the next podcast. I want to leave the last 15 minutes of the show for fan questions, listener questions, whatever you're wanting to ask about. I'll make sure that I'm doing my homework and I'm making sure that I can answer the questions. And, I got my offensive and defensive coordinator, Michael Pless, over here. If I don't know, he knows. So, so there's that. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. It's been a fun 2017, and I do apologize. I was on vacation as long as I was, but it was fun. But full season next season. I'll let you guys know which Bucs games I will be going to. I will try to hit at least 2, maybe 3. So we'll see how that all works out. But anyway, appreciate you guys. B Loggins. Hey, everybody have a good night. And I hope everybody's having a good New Year's, and be sure to check us out next week. We'll be talking a whole lot more about free agency. We'll be talking more about the draft, and be sure, if you're not following Michael Pless, make sure you check out Michael Pless at realbuckstalk.com. Check out some of his articles, because he's going to be on it. He's a guy you need to be following, this guy, for the draft. Trust me. You won't be disappointed if you're following him for the draft. But anyway, that's pretty much it for me. And we're going to go ahead and get out of here. And remember, Buc What You Heard.